I'm Summer. I'm 30 years old, and last week I walked into my own birthday party, only to discover it was actually my trial. 75 relatives, not a single smile. My father handed me a folder containing DNA results and said, "You're not ours. Pay us back." My mother snatched my car keys right out of my hand. My sister filmed the whole thing for TikTok. I stood there, surrounded by 75 people I once called family, and not one of them said a word in my defense. But then, a man stepped out of the crowd. A man my parents swore had been dead since before I was born. My biological father. And he didn't come empty-handed. Before I continue, if you find this story worth following, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to know what happens next. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now let me take you back 4 weeks, to the day my sister called with exciting news. "Summer, oh my God, you won't believe this!" Brianna's voice pierced through my phone speaker while I was charting vitals in the ICU break room. My younger sister rarely called unless she needed something: money, a ride, someone to vent to about her latest influencer drama. "What's going on?" I asked, keeping my voice low. Night shift meant keeping the peace. "Mom and Dad are throwing you a surprise party for your 30th. They're inviting everyone: Aunt Dorothy, Uncle Robert, the cousins from Ohio, literally the whole family." I almost dropped my coffee. A party. For me. In 30 years, my parents had never thrown me a birthday party. Not for my 18th, not for my 21st, not even when I graduated nursing school top of my class. But Brianna? Her 21st birthday had been a $15,000 extravaganza at the Riverside Country Club, 100 guests, a 5-tier cake. Dad gave a speech about how proud he was of his little princess. My 21st? A quiet dinner at home. Mom made meatloaf. Afterward, she patted my shoulder and said, "Money's tight this year, sweetheart. You understand." I understood. I always understood. "Bree, are you sure?" I asked carefully. "Mom and Dad don't really do parties for me." "I know, right? That's what makes it so special. They said turning 30 is a big deal. They want to do something nice." She paused. "You have to act surprised, okay? I totally wasn't supposed to tell you." "I'll act surprised," I promised. After we hung up, I sat in that break room staring at my lukewarm coffee. Maybe things were changing. Maybe after 30 years they finally saw me. I thought that party might finally prove I mattered to them. I had no idea it would prove the exact opposite. The week before the party, I did what I always do. I ran the numbers. 7 years as an ICU nurse. 7 years of 12-hour shifts, code blues, and holding strangers' hands while they took their last breaths. And every single month for those 7 years, I sent $500 home to help my parents. $42,000 total. I never asked for it back. I never even mentioned it. That's what family does, right? You help when you can. Meanwhile, Brianna, with her 50,000 Instagram followers and 0 paying jobs, still lived in our parents' basement. She'd never contributed a dime. Last month, she asked Dad for $8,000 to invest in her content creation business. He wrote the check without blinking. When my car broke down 3 years ago, I asked if I could borrow $2,000 for a down payment on a used Honda. Dad looked at me like I'd asked for a kidney. "You're a strong, independent woman, Summer. You can figure it out." So I figured it out. Took out a loan, worked extra shifts, paid it off myself. Mom's voice echoed in my head. "Brianna's still finding herself. She needs support. You don't need anything from us. You're the capable one." The capable one. Translation: the one they could ignore. That night, while prepping for the party, I caught myself wondering something I'd buried for years. I'd never actually seen my birth certificate. The original one. Mom said it was lost in some flood back in 2005. Funny thing though, I checked the county records once, out of curiosity. There was no major flood in our area in 2005, but I pushed that thought aside. Why would my parents lie about something like that? The stakes couldn't have been higher. 3 days before the party, I got the email I'd been waiting 5 years to receive. I was being considered for the charge nurse position. The interview was in 2 weeks. Everything I'd worked for was finally within reach. There was just one catch. The hospital required a professional recommendation letter, and my manager suggested I ask someone with board connections, someone who could speak to my character and work ethic. "Your father used to be on our board, didn't he?" she asked. "Gerald Patterson." A letter from him would carry serious weight, so I called Dad. "A recommendation letter?" He sounded almost pleased. "Of course, sweetheart. I'd be happy to write one for you." I nearly cried from relief. "I'll give it to you at your birthday party," he continued. "Make it a special moment, a father presenting his daughter's future to the whole family." Something about his tone felt off, too rehearsed, too smooth, but I dismissed it. Maybe he was just being sentimental. 30 was a milestone after all. "That sounds wonderful, Dad. Thank you." "Anything for my girl." My girl. He'd never called me that before. That was always Brianna's title. I hung up feeling lighter than I had in months. The promotion, the party, the letter, everything was falling into place. I was even ahead on my apartment savings. 3 more months and I'd have enough for a down payment on my own place. For the first time in years, I let myself believe that maybe my family was finally seeing me, really seeing me. I bought a new dress for the party, navy blue, elegant but not flashy. I wanted to look professional, worthy. I had no idea I was dressing for my own execution. The night of the party, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and barely recognized myself. The navy dress hugged my frame perfectly. I'd done my makeup carefully, subtle but polished. Professional. I even bought a small gift for my parents. A leather-bound photo album I'd spent weeks filling with family pictures. Ridiculous, right? Bringing a gift to your own birthday party. But that was me. Always giving. Always trying to earn something that should have been freely given. I remember being 10 years old, spending hours on a Mother's Day painting for Mom. Watercolors, a garden scene. I thought it was beautiful. Mom glanced at it, then looked at Brianna's stick figure drawing and gushed, "Oh, sweetheart, you're such an artist. Let's put this on the fridge." My painting went in a drawer. I found it years later, still rolled up, never framed. From that day forward, I tried harder, studied harder, worked harder. I thought if I could just be good enough, talented enough, successful enough, they'd finally look at me the way they looked at Brianna. 30 years. 30 years of trying. Before leaving my apartment, I checked my reflection one final time. Tonight's going to be different, I told myself. They're throwing you a party. They're proud of you. Dad's writing you a letter. Things are changing. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. That's when I saw her. Brianna, sitting in her car outside my building, her phone aimed at my Honda. "Hey," I called out, walking over. "What are you doing?" She grinned, pocketing her phone. "Nothing. Just love your car. Can I borrow it sometime?" "Sure," I said automatically. She smiled wider. "Great. See you at the party, sis." Something cold slithered through my stomach, but I ignored it. I was good at ignoring warnings. The Grand Oak restaurant glittered like a promise. Through the windows I could see the warm glow of chandeliers, the shadows of dozens of people moving inside. My parents had reserved the entire private dining room, something they'd only ever done for Brianna's graduation party. I sat in my car for a moment, rehearsing my surprised face. Wide eyes, hand over heart. "Oh my goodness, you shouldn't have." Silly, but I wanted to give them what they wanted. I wanted this night to be perfect. I walked through the entrance, my heels clicking against marble floors. A hostess directed me to the back. "The Patterson party? Right through those doors, ma'am." I took a breath, pushed open the doors. Silence. No streamers, no balloons, no chorus of surprise, just 75 faces turning toward me in unison. Nobody was smiling. I scanned the room, my rehearsed expression frozen on my face. There was Uncle Robert, arms crossed, jaw tight. Aunt Dorothy clutching her purse like a shield, eyes darting away from mine. Cousins, second cousins, people I hadn't seen since childhood, all watching me with something between pity and judgment. No cake, no decorations, just a long table at the center of the room, and on that table a single red folder. My parents stood behind it like prosecutors at a bench. Dad held a microphone. "Summer." His voice echoed through the speakers, cold and formal. "Sit down. We need to talk." My legs moved on autopilot. I lowered myself into a chair that had been positioned facing the table, facing them, like a defendant in a courtroom. That's when I noticed the woman in the corner with a camera, not a party photographer, a videographer. They were recording this. "Dad?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. "What's going on?" He didn't answer. He just opened the red folder. "Summer, do you know why we invited 75 people here tonight?" Dad's voice was ice. "My birthday?" The words sounded pathetic even to my own ears. "No." He shook his head slowly. "To serve as witnesses." The room shifted. Chairs creaked. Someone coughed. "Witnesses to what?" Dad pulled a document from the red folder. His hand was steady, practiced, like he'd rehearsed this moment. "This is a DNA test." He held it up for everyone to see. "Your mother and I submitted samples 3 months ago. The results came back conclusive." My heart stopped. "You are not our biological daughter." The room erupted in whispers. I heard gasps, murmurs, someone saying, "I knew it. I always knew something was off." "What?" I gripped the armrest of my chair. "That's impossible. You're not ours, Summer." Mom stepped forward, her face twisted into something ugly. "You never were. We took you in. We raised you. We gave you everything." "And how did you repay us?" Dad's voice rose. "By slandering us to your friends. By acting like we were never good enough for you." "I never—" "We have witnesses." Dad cut me off, gesturing to the crowd. "People who've heard you complain about us, about how unfairly you were treated, about how Brianna got everything and you got nothing." My mind reeled. Yes, I'd vented to friends. Who doesn't? But I'd never slandered them. I'd never said anything that wasn't true. Dad slid another paper from the folder. A spreadsheet, numbers, dates. "This is an itemized list of everything we spent raising you. Food, clothing, education, housing." He paused for effect. $500,000. The number hung in the air like a guillotine. "And we want it back." Before I could respond, Mom lunged. Her fingers closed around my wrist, prying my car keys from my hand before I even registered what was happening. "This car." She held up the keys like evidence. "You bought it with money from a job you only got because of your father's connections. Technically, it belongs to us." "I paid for that car myself." My voice cracked. "Every payment, every cent. I have the loan documents. Your salary comes from the hospital where Gerald was a board member." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Without him, you'd be nothing. You owe us everything you have." I looked around desperately. 75 relatives, people I'd shared Christmas dinners with, people who'd bounced me on their knees when I was a baby, people who'd told me they loved me. Not one of them moved. Uncle Robert actually nodded. "She's got a point, Summer. Your father opened a lot of doors for you." That's not how this works." "Smile for the camera, sis." Brianna appeared at my side, her phone inches from my face, the red recording light blinking. "This is amazing content," she whispered gleefully. "My followers are going to lose their minds. Family drama, DNA reveals. This is gold." "Brianna, stop." "Shh. Keep talking. The comments are going crazy." I looked at the screen. She was live streaming. Thousands of viewers. Comments scrolling faster than I could read. OMG, this is insane. That poor girl, the parents are psycho fake. Has to be fake. But it wasn't fake. This was my life, being dissected, being broadcast, being destroyed. And I was trapped in a chair, surrounded by people who were supposed to love me, while my own sister turned my humiliation into content. That's when something inside me shifted. In the chaos, I noticed something strange. A man, standing alone in the far corner of the room, near the emergency exit. He wasn't dressed like the rest of my relatives, no casual blazers or department store dresses. His suit was expensive, charcoal gray, impeccably tailored, the kind of fabric that doesn't wrinkle. He looked about 60. Silver-streaked hair, strong jaw. And his eyes were fixed on me. Not with judgment, not with curiosity, with something deeper. Something almost like pain. I didn't recognize him. He wasn't family, wasn't a friend of my parents as far as I knew. So why was he here? At a private event? Standing in the shadows like he was waiting for something? Next to him stood a younger woman in a pencil skirt, clutching a thick manila folder. She kept checking her watch, then whispering something to him. He shook his head each time, patient, watching. "Summer!" Dad's voice snapped my attention back. "Are you listening?" "Who is that man?" I asked instead, pointing toward the corner. Dad's face flickered, just for a second, with something I couldn't name. Fear, recognition. "No one," he said quickly. "Focus on what matters. You're going to sign this document." "Gerald." The stranger's voice cut through the room, deep, calm, commanding. The entire restaurant went silent. My father went pale. "Not yet," the man said almost gently. "Let her finish asking her questions first." Dad's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Mom grabbed his arm. "Who let him in? Gerald, who let him in?" But neither of them answered. And the man in the gray suit simply watched me, something shifting in his expression. Something that looked almost like hope. I didn't know him, but somehow he knew me. "Summer." Dad's voice had a new edge now, desperation barely concealed beneath authority. "I need you to sign this document, tonight, in front of everyone." He slid a contract across the table. I could see the header, promissory note. "This legally obligates you to repay $500,000 over 10 years, monthly payments of over £10. "I need time to read this," I interrupted. "You'll sign now." His eyes darted toward the stranger in the corner, then back to me. "If you don't, we'll sue. 75 witnesses saw you receive food, shelter, education from us. You admitted it yourself. You owe us." "Gerald." The voice came from my left. Aunt Dorothy, Mom's older sister, had risen from her seat. Her face was ashen, her hands trembling. "Are you sure about this?" She was speaking to Mom, but her eyes kept flicking toward the man in the gray suit. If he finds out what you... "Shut up, Dorothy." Mom's voice was a whip crack. "But the receipts." "I said, shut up." The room went silent. Dorothy looked like she might cry. "What receipts?" I asked. Nobody answered. Nobody. "Aunt Dorothy." I turned to face her fully. "What receipts are you talking about?" She opened her mouth, closed it, looked at Mom, then at the floor. "Nothing," she whispered. I shouldn't have said anything. But I saw her hand drift to her purse. I saw the way she clutched it tighter, like she was protecting something inside. "Linda," Dorothy's voice cracked. "I still have them. The ones you asked me to burn 20 years ago. I couldn't do it. I kept some." Mom's face went white. Whatever was in that purse, whatever those receipts proved, my parents didn't want me to know. But I was starting to understand. I wasn't the one with secrets here. They were. Dad moved fast. He grabbed the microphone and addressed the room, his voice booming through the speakers with practiced authority. "Family, friends, I want everyone to witness this moment." He paused for effect, scanning the crowd. "Tonight, Summer Patterson, the woman we raised as our own daughter, will acknowledge her debt to this family." Uncle Robert started clapping. A few others joined in, uncertain but obedient. 30 years ago, Linda and I opened our home to a child no one wanted. We sacrificed, we struggled, we gave her everything, and this is how she repays us? With ingratitude? With complaints? More nodding now. The narrative was working. I could see it spreading through the room like poison. "I always said she was ungrateful," someone muttered. "Never appreciated anything," another voice agreed. "Summer." Dad turned back to me, microphone still in hand. "Sign the document. Apologize to your family. And maybe, we can still have a relationship." Brianna shoved her phone closer. "Say something, Summer. My viewers want to hear you grovel." I looked at the contract. $500,000. Payments until I was 40. My entire future signed away to people who were publicly dismembering me. "And if I don't sign?" My voice was steadier than I expected. Dad's expression hardened. "Then I contact your hospital tomorrow. I tell them their charge nurse candidate is a fraud. A liar. A woman who refuses to honor her debts." He smiled coldly. "I was on their board for 15 years, Summer. Who do you think they'll believe?" The threat hung in the air. My career, my apartment, my future, everything I'd built for myself. He could destroy it with one phone call. I had no leverage, no power, no allies, or so I thought. I am an ICU nurse. I've held dying patients' hands at 3 a.m. I've delivered impossible news to families. I've stayed calm while alarms screamed and hearts stopped, and everything descended into controlled chaos. I don't break under pressure. I can't afford to. So I took a breath, then another, and I stopped being the scared little girl they expected me to be. "Dad," I said, my voice cutting through the murmurs, "I have a question." He frowned. This wasn't the script. "What?" "You said I'm not your biological daughter, that you have DNA proof." I leaned forward. "So who are my biological parents?" Silence. "Well?" Mom stepped in quickly. "They abandoned you. They didn't want you. We saved you." "That's not what I asked." I stood up slowly. "I asked who they are." "Dead." Dad's answer came too fast. "Both of them. Car accident. Years ago." "Interesting." I was surprised by my own steadiness. "So if they're dead, who gave you the DNA sample to compare mine against?" Dad's mouth opened. Nothing came out. "DNA tests require comparison samples," I continued. "You can't just test my blood and declare I'm not yours. You need something to compare it to. So whose DNA did you use?" The crowd shifted. I saw confused looks, furrowed brows. The logic was landing. That's not your concern," Dad stammered. "A dead person's DNA." I pressed harder. "How did you get it? Did you exhume a body? Did you have samples stored somewhere for 30 years? More murmurs. Uncle Robert uncrossed his arms. "Or," I said quietly, "is one of my biological parents not dead at all?" In the corner, the man in the gray suit took a step forward, and for the first time, my father looked truly afraid. "Oh my God, guys, this is getting so good!" Brianna's voice shattered the tension. She was still live streaming, narrating for her audience like this was some reality TV show. "So basically, my parents found out 3 months ago that Summer isn't really their kid. Someone contacted Dad about it. I think it was a lawyer or something, and they've been planning this whole reveal ever since." "Brianna!" Mom's screech echoed through the room. "Turn that off now!" But the damage was done. I turned to face my sister. 3 months ago, someone contacted Dad? Brianna's eyes went wide, finally realizing she'd made a mistake. I wasn't supposed to. Who contacted him, Brianna?" I stepped toward her. "If my biological parents are dead, who reached out 3 months ago?" She backed away, phone still recording. "I don't know. I just saw an email on Dad's computer. Some law firm. Something about end of agreement and mandatory disclosure. Brianna, I swear to God. Dad lunged for her phone, but I was faster. End of agreement? I blocked his path. What agreement? What mandatory disclosure? The crowd was riveted now. Comments flooded Brianna's stream, thousands watching, thousands witnessing. There's no agreement, Mom shrieked. She's making things up. Brianna, tell them you're lying. But Brianna's face told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't lying. Someone had contacted my parents 3 months ago. Someone with lawyers. Someone forcing them to disclose something they'd kept hidden for 30 years. I turned toward the corner. The man in the gray suit had moved closer, 10 feet away now. His eyes were wet. And when I looked at him, really looked, I saw something I should have recognized immediately. My eyes. He had my eyes. You're not dead, I whispered. He shook his head slowly, tears streaming down his face. No, sweetheart, I'm not. Okay, I need to pause here for just a moment. If you're watching this and you've already figured out who that man is, drop your guess in the comments right now. And if you've ever been through something like this yourself, betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, I want to hear how you survived it. I read every single comment. Now back to that night. The man stepped forward, and the crowd parted like water. Allow me to introduce myself. His voice filled the room, calm, measured, carrying an authority my father could only pretend to possess. Security! Dad's voice cracked. Someone call security! This man is trespassing! But no one moved. My name is Marcus Whitfield. The man stopped a few feet from me. And I am Summer's biological father. The room exploded, gasps, shouts, 75 phones emerging from pockets and purses. I couldn't breathe. You... I stared at him. You're supposed to be dead. Marcus's jaw tightened. Is that what they told you? I nodded, unable to speak. I have never been dead, Summer. His voice softened. I've been waiting. For 30 years I've been waiting for this day. He's lying, Mom screamed, her composure finally shattering. He's a con man, a fraud. Gerald, tell them. But Dad was frozen, his face the color of ash. Gerald? Marcus turned to face him, and something cold entered his tone. Would you like to tell her the truth? Or should I? Silence. Marcus nodded slowly. I thought so. He turned back to me and his expression changed, became gentle, almost tender. Your mother, your biological mother, was named Catherine. Catherine Hayes. We loved each other very much. When she became pregnant with you, her family... He paused, composing himself. Her family disapproved. They forced her to give you up. Then how? The Pattersons agreed to adopt you, under certain conditions. His eyes flickered toward my parents. Conditions they were very well compensated for. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. What conditions? Marcus reached into his jacket and withdrew a photograph, old, slightly faded. A young woman with my face, my eyes, my smile. This was your mother, he said softly, and she loved you more than anything in this world. The woman in the pencil skirt, Marcus's assistant, stepped forward and handed him a thick manila folder. Gerald, Marcus said, his voice dangerously calm. You just demanded that Summer repay $500,000 for the cost of raising her. That's right. Dad's voice was weak, defensive. Every penny we spent. Interesting. Marcus opened the folder. Because, according to my records, you've already been paid. He pulled out a stack of papers and held them up for the room to see. Bank statements, transaction records, dozens of them. $1,500 every month for 28 years. Marcus's voice carried to every corner of the room. Starting in 1996, ending just last year. That's over $500,000, Gerald. 504,000 to be precise. The crowd stirred. Confusion rippled through the relatives. What is that? Uncle Robert demanded. These are wire transfer records. Marcus handed a stack to the nearest table. Feel free to examine them. Every single payment is documented. Dates, amounts, account numbers. He paused. And Linda's signature confirming receipt. Mom let out a strangled sound. You? I turned to face my adoptive mother. You received money for 28 years? She wouldn't meet my eyes. Answer me! It was compensation, she finally screamed, for taking you in, for raising someone else's unwanted. Unwanted? Marcus's voice cut like a blade. I begged to keep her. I begged to raise her myself, but your family demanded I wait until she turned 30. They demanded I stay away. His voice cracked. And I agreed, because I thought you would love her. I thought you would give her a good life. He looked at me, tears streaming openly now. I'm sorry, Summer. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. Marcus reached into his jacket one more time. This time he pulled out an envelope. Old, yellowed with age, the edges soft from years of handling. Your mother, Catherine, passed away when you were 5 years old. His voice trembled. Cancer. She fought it for 2 years, but in the end, he couldn't finish. I felt tears sliding down my own cheeks. Before she died, she wrote you a letter. She gave it to me and asked me to keep it safe until you were old enough to understand. He held out the envelope with both hands, like an offering. I took it. My fingers were shaking so badly I could barely open it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in elegant handwriting that was somehow familiar, like a song I'd heard in a dream. My dearest Summer, if you're reading this, I'm no longer with you. I'm sorry, baby girl. I'm so sorry I couldn't stay. I want you to know that you were never unwanted. You were never a mistake. From the moment I knew you existed, you were the greatest gift of my life. Your father, Marcus, is a good man, the best man I've ever known. I was too young and too scared to fight for us, and that's my biggest regret. Please don't blame him for being absent. He wanted you. He always wanted you. Live your life with courage, my darling. Be kind, be strong, and know that wherever I am, I'm watching over you. I love you. I will always love you. Mom. I couldn't see through the tears. The letter blurred, then disappeared as I pressed it against my chest. 75 people watched in absolute silence, and for the first time that night, I didn't feel alone. I felt found. I need to say something. Aunt Dorothy's voice cut through the silence. She stood up, clutching her purse against her chest like armor. Dorothy, sit down. Mom's voice was venomous. No! Dorothy shook her head, tears streaming. I've kept your secrets for 30 years, Linda. I can't do it anymore. She opened her purse and pulled out a small stack of papers, wrinkled, faded, some spotted with age. These are bank receipts. Her hands trembled as she held them up. Every month, Linda asked me to pick up the wire transfers in cash. She told me it was from a life insurance policy. Dorothy laughed bitterly. I believed her. For years I believed her. Dorothy, I swear to God, I found out the truth 5 years ago. Dorothy's voice strengthened. I saw Marcus's name on one of the transfers. I confronted Linda. She told me if I said anything, she'd tell everyone about... She faltered. About my own mistakes. She blackmailed me into silence. I looked at my adoptive mother, really looked at her, and saw someone I'd never recognized before. You knew, I said slowly. All this time, you knew I had a father who wanted me, who was paying to make sure I was cared for, and you let me believe I was unwanted. Mom's face twisted. We raised you. We fed you. We gave you a roof over your head. With his money, I gestured toward Marcus. You raised me with his money, and you still treated me like I was less than nothing. I stood, finally steady on my feet. You didn't want $500,000 from me tonight. My voice was cold, clear. You wanted to get rid of me before he could tell me the truth. Before I found out what you really were. Mom had no answer. Because there was none. Dad made one last desperate attempt. Summer, listen to me. His voice had changed, softer now, almost pleading. We're still your family. We raised you. We love you. This was just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I almost laughed. You staged a public humiliation. You demanded $500,000. You threatened my career. You had Brianna livestream my destruction to thousands of people. I shook my head. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a betrayal. But we're still your parents. No. The word came out calm, final. You're not. You're the people who took money to raise me, then treated me like a burden. You're the people who lied to me for 30 years. You're the people who weaponized my own birthday to destroy me. I turned to face the crowd, all 75 of them. I'm not asking any of you to choose sides. This is my family drama, not yours. I paused. But I will say this, not one of you stood up for me tonight. Not when they called me a fraud. Not when they took my keys. Not when my sister shoved a camera in my face. 75 people, and not one voice of defense. Silence. Eyes dropping to the floor. I won't forget that. Finally, I turned to Marcus. Mr. Whitfield. I stopped, swallowed. Marcus, I need time. I can't call you Dad. Not yet. This is all too much. His eyes were wet, but he nodded, understanding. I've waited 30 years, he said softly. I can wait a little longer. I walked toward the door. Mom tried to block my path. You can't just leave. We're not finished. Yes. I looked her in the eye. We are. I stepped around her and walked out of that restaurant. And I never looked back. I wasn't there for what happened after I left, but Dorothy told me everything later, and Brianna's live stream, which she apparently forgot to turn off, captured every painful second. The moment the door closed behind me, the room erupted. Gerald turned on Linda. You knew? You knew there was money this whole time and you never told me? I was protecting us, Linda screamed back. Protecting this family. By lying to me for 28 years? You never asked questions. You just spent what I gave you. The relatives scattered like roaches when the lights come on. Uncle Robert tried to calm Gerald down and got shoved for his trouble. Aunt Dorothy quietly gathered her things and slipped out a side door. And Brianna? Brianna stood frozen, watching her follower count drop in real time. Within 24 hours, her live stream had been clipped, shared, and viewed over 2 million times. But not the way she wanted. Toxic family exposes themselves on live stream. Worst parents ever caught on camera. Girl documents her own family's downfall, lol. The comments were merciless. Brands she'd been negotiating with pulled out. Her authentic family content suddenly looked very different in context. As for Marcus, he left the restaurant quietly, without confrontation. He didn't need revenge. He'd come with truth, and truth had done its work. That night, sitting alone in my apartment, I read Catherine's letter 17 times. I traced her handwriting with my fingertips. I looked at the photograph Marcus had given me, my mother at 22, laughing at something off camera, her eyes exactly like mine. I cried until I couldn't breathe. But somewhere beneath the grief, beneath the shock and the betrayal, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. The kind of hope that comes from finally knowing who you really are. 3 days later, I was called into the hospital director's office. I walked in expecting the worst. Gerald had promised to destroy my career. He had connections, influence. 15 years on the board. Dr. Rebecca Chen sat behind her desk, her expression unreadable. Please sit down. I sat, waited. Summer, I'm going to be direct. She folded her hands. I received an email from your father, from Gerald Patterson, demanding that we terminate your employment. My stomach dropped. He claims you're unfit for the charge nurse position, that you have character issues. She paused. He also attached a video, said it would show your true nature. I closed my eyes. The live stream. Of course. I watched it. Dr. Chen, I can explain. Summer. Her voice was gentle. I watched you stand in front of 75 people who were actively trying to destroy you. I watched you keep your composure, ask intelligent questions, and walk out with your dignity intact. I opened my eyes. I also received a phone call. She leaned back. From Marcus Whitfield. Do you know who he is? My biological father. He owns 4 hospitals in the Northeast. She smiled slightly. He called to tell me explicitly that he would not be interfering in any employment decisions regarding you. He said, and I quote, "Summer deserves to succeed on her own merits, not because of who her father is." I couldn't speak. The charge nurse position is yours, Summer. You earned it. Dr. Chen stood and extended her hand. Congratulations. I shook her hand, barely processing. One more thing. She smiled. Gerald Patterson's email didn't hurt your case, but it certainly hurt his reputation. The board has formally removed his name from our benefactor wall. Small victories. But that one felt pretty good. 2 weeks after the party, Dorothy called with updates. Gerald and Linda had filed for divorce. Not because of me, or not entirely because of me. The night of the party, Gerald had gone through Linda's personal files. He found more than just the wire transfers from Marcus. Apparently, she'd been hiding money for years, accounts he never knew about, purchases she'd concealed, a secret credit card with a $40,000 balance. Turns out your mother, your adoptive mother, had been planning her escape for a decade, Dorothy told me. Gerald just gave her the excuse she needed to leave. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd staged a public trial to expose my betrayal. Instead, they'd exposed their own. Brianna lost over 20,000 followers in the first week. The comments that followed her everywhere were brutal. Aren't you the girl who live-streamed her sister's trauma for clout? Imagine exploiting your own family for views. Couldn't pay me to follow this garbage human. She deleted her TikTok, started fresh on a new account. Last I heard, she was doing mindfulness content now. The irony writes itself. Gerald tried to reach me once, a long email that managed to apologize while still blaming everyone but himself. I'm sorry things happened the way they did, but you have to understand the pressure I was under. I deleted it without responding. Linda called 12 times. I let them all go to voicemail. The messages got progressively more desperate. First angry, then pleading, then weepy. I didn't respond to any of them. Not because I hated them, not because I wanted revenge, but because I'd finally learned something it took me 30 years to understand. Some relationships can't be repaired. They can only be survived. If you've made it this far, I have a question for you. Do you think Summer should forgive her adoptive parents? Comment A if you think yes, B if you think no, and C if you think it depends on what happens next. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time, because what I learned in the months that followed changed everything. Let me finish the story. 1 month after the party, I met Marcus for the second time. Not at his corporate office, not at some fancy restaurant designed to impress. At a coffee shop called the Bean Counter, a tiny place with mismatched furniture and mediocre espresso. Catherine and I used to come here, he explained, settling into a worn armchair, before everything fell apart. We'd sit in this exact corner and talk for hours about our future. I looked around at the peeling wallpaper, the crooked picture frames. It's not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know, something bigger. Marcus smiled, a sad smile that made him look younger somehow. Money doesn't fix everything, Summer. I learned that the hard way. He stirred his coffee slowly. I could have fought harder for you. I could have hired better lawyers, pressured Catherine's family, used my resources to force the issue. Why didn't you? Because Catherine asked me not to. He looked at me, and I saw 30 years of regret in his eyes. She was dying, and she was scared. Scared that if I pushed too hard, her family would take you somewhere I'd never find you. She made me promise to wait, to trust that the Pattersons would do right by you. They didn't. No, his voice cracked. They didn't. And I will never forgive myself for not seeing that sooner. We sat in silence for a while. I don't know how to do this, I finally admitted. I don't know how to have a father. Marcus reached across the table and gently took my hand. Neither do I, really. He smiled through tears. But I'd like to try, if you'll let me. I didn't pull away. Okay, I said softly. Let's try. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. 3 months later, I signed the lease on my own apartment. It wasn't fancy, a one-bedroom on the 3rd floor of an older building, with a kitchen the size of a closet, and windows that stuck when it rained. But it was mine. Every penny came from my own savings, my own paychecks, my own years of sacrifice. Marcus offered to help with the down payment. I said no. I need to do this myself, I told him over coffee, our weekly ritual now, always at the bean counter, always in that same corner. He nodded. I understand. And he did. That was the thing about Marcus. He understood that helping didn't mean rescuing, that being a father didn't mean taking over. He showed up on moving day anyway, not with money or movers, but with a toolbox and a willingness to assemble IKEA furniture. We spent 6 hours putting together a bookshelf. It came out slightly crooked. It was perfect. On my new desk, I placed Catherine's photograph in a simple wooden frame. Every morning, I look at her face and I see myself. I don't talk to Gerald anymore, or Linda, or Brianna. Dorothy calls sometimes. She's the only Patterson I still speak to. She sends me recipes, asks about work, never mentions the party. I think she feels guilty. I think she's trying to make amends in her own small way. I let her. Marcus and I see each other every Sunday now. Sometimes we talk for hours. Sometimes we just sit in comfortable silence. I'm learning who he is, his humor, his regrets, his quiet strength. I'm not ready to call him Dad yet, but I'm getting closer. Summer, he told me last week. I don't need a title, I just need you in my life. That was enough. For now, that's more than enough. Looking back, I've spent a lot of time trying to understand why. Why did Gerald and Linda do what they did? A therapist friend once explained it to me this way. Gerald wasn't evil. He was terrified. His entire identity was built on control. Control of his finances, his family, his reputation. When Marcus resurfaced, that control was threatened. Gerald didn't attack me because he hated me. He attacked because he was scared of being exposed. He lashed out before the truth could come out on its own terms. It doesn't excuse what he did, but it explains it. Linda was more complicated. She carried jealousy like a second heartbeat. Jealousy of Catherine, the woman Marcus truly loved. Jealousy of me, the living reminder of that love. Every time she looked at my face, she saw the daughter of her husband's imagined rival. She never bonded with me because she never let herself. And when the opportunity came to get rid of me while keeping the moral high ground, she took it. Again, not an excuse, an explanation. And me? What was my role in all of this? Here's the hard truth. I made it easy for them. 30 years of people-pleasing. 30 years of swallowing my needs to keep the peace. 30 years of telling myself that if I just tried harder, loved harder, gave more, they would finally see my worth. They never did. Because people who use you don't want you to have worth. Your unworthiness is what makes them feel powerful. I was so busy trying to earn their love that I never stopped to ask if they were capable of giving it. Here's what I want you to take from my story, if anything. Your value isn't determined by how others treat you. If someone consistently makes you feel like you're not enough, not good enough, not grateful enough, not worthy enough, that's information. Listen to it. Setting boundaries isn't revenge, it's self-respect. And sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you're meant to keep. I'm 30 years old now. I have a job I love, an apartment that's mine, a biological father who's learning how to be present, and a future I'm writing myself, one day at a time. The Pattersons wanted to destroy me. Instead, they set me free. And honestly, that might be the only gift they ever truly gave me. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story made you think about your own relationships, the ones that lift you up and the ones that hold you down, I hope you'll share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. And check the description for other videos I think you'll connect with. Take care of yourselves. And remember, you deserve people who choose you.